How's it going, everybody? Today I'm making a video on how to grout your tile floor. And I'm making this video for all those people that want to grout their house themselves and save a couple $100, kind of like I did. The problem that I ran into is when I started doing research on YouTube on how to do tiling and how to do grout. I found a bunch of good videos on how to actually tile, but I was a little confused when I started doing an actual grout. So I wanted to help the rest of you out there that might be a little confused, kind of like I was, and show you a little bit more information. There's a couple different types of grouts, and the main type is your sanded and your unsanded. Now I don't remember the exact sizes. The sizes will be on the bag, but if you're doing a gap in between your tile, 1/8 of an inch or less, you want to use unsanded grout. And if you are doing a gap in between your your tile that is larger than 1/8 of an inch, you want to use sanded. I'm actually tiling in my office today, and I'm using sanded grout on a 1/16 only because this is what I have, and it seems to be working fine. So I don't understand the science behind why you need sanded or unsanded, but I'm letting you know that on a 1/16 inch gap like I'm working with here, I'm using sanded. I'm just watering down my grout a little more than normal. So to get started, you want to mix up your grout, and the thing to remember is that you don't need much water. Just add a little bit of water, a little bit more at a time, because the smallest amount of water changes your grout a lot. You want to mix it until normally it's a little thinner than peanut butter, but not any more runny than, say, chocolate pudding. Today I'm doing the consistency of about chocolate pudding, and you can kind of see it here. And I've just mixed up a little bowl, and you can kind of see it runs off. I'm using rubber gloves simply because it makes the cleanup on my hands a lot easier, and I like to mix it with my hands versus a spatula or anything like that. I feel like it gets it mixed better. But once you get your grout all mixed up, all I do is take the grout, pour it out of the bowl onto the floor. And again, I'm using it a little bit thinner than I normally would, simply because I have a smaller gap and I want to get it into the gap. Okay, once you've got your grout on the ground, you want to get you a nice grouting float. They make a whole bunch of different kinds of these. This is just one that I got from Lowe's. It's 10 bucks. It's got a rubber base on it. Works really, really good. I've been real happy with it. First thing you want to do is, after you have cleaned up your little grout bowl and washed your hand, you want to put a little bit of water on the base of your grout float just to get it going. Makes it a little bit better, I have found. Once you get that, then you want to start spreading your grout around. Spread it around a little bit and take it and just push it into the lines. Now when you do this, you'll notice that I'm not going straight across. I'm actually going at an angle like this. Because if you go straight across, you'll see, if I go this way, you go straight across, it falls down into the gap in between the tile. And then you lose a bunch of grout that was down in your tile. So you always want to make sure that you're going diagonally across. You can use the end of the float like this, or you can come across all the way like this. Now don't be scared of grouting. It's really not a big a deal. It's more of a pain than anything, because it's time consuming, you're on your knees, and it does take a little bit of time to get everything grouted properly. But don't be afraid of grouting. One thing that I learned along the way was that if you wait about 2 or 3 hours and you mess up on grouting, it's not a big deal. All you have to do is get a utility knife or a razor blade. Take it and run it down this tile. Take it and run it down the grout line, and it comes right up in the form of powder, and then you can just vacuum it right up. So if you make a mistake, if you don't like it, it's not that big a deal. And once the grout dries, within reason, you can just rub it up with a wet cloth or something like that. So don't be afraid of grouting. If you're not sure what color you want, go get a small bag, grout the area, let it dry, and if you don't like it, scrape it up and try a different one. It's really not that big of a deal. So I'm just going to do this real small area for you guys. And again, you can see that I'm working diagonally just to make sure all the little cracks are nice and filled up. And you can see that it makes a pretty big mess. No big deal. All you're going to do next to get most of it off is use the side of your float. And again, going diagonally to make sure that you don't fall into the lines on your tile. Scrape off as much as you can. Once you've done that, you've got it all cleaned off. You've got it cleaned off as much as you can with your float. Just leave it to dry. And you're going to let this dry for anywhere from 3 to 8 minutes. It kind of depends on the temperature of your room and the humidity and everything, but you'll see that it will dry to a nice white haze. I say white simply because I'm using a light colored grout. If you're using a darker grout or a red grout, I'm sure it'll turn a different color. But either way, it'll turn nice and cloudy, nice and hazy. Once you've gotten it to where it's a little bit hazy and it's starting to dry, and again, like I said, 3 to 8 minutes, something like that, what you're going to do next is you're going to do what they call working the lines. And if you look at your grout right now, just after you've cleaned it off with the float, you can tell that the lines are not all that pretty. They're really rough. There's a whole bunch of extra grout on the actual tile. There's a lot on the edges of the tile right here. They don't look real nice. That's okay. Because what you're going to do next, called working the lines, is you're going to get you a big yellow sponge and you are going to dip it in water, wring it out, and you're going to use that to clean up those lines and make them nice and perfect. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work our lines like I said before. And all that involves is getting a wet sponge. Again, got it from Lowe's. I think they're $1. Buy a couple of them because they start to go bad if you've done a big area. Dip it in water, get it nice and wet, and then wring it out. You want most of the water out, not every single drop, because you need some water to re-moisten the grout and help to spread it around. I don't know if you can see it in the video or not, but we've got a nice white haze all over the ground here. But our grout lines are still a little bit dark. That's good. Like I said before, you want to let this dry for about 3 to 8 minutes. And again, don't be scared of grouting. It's not a big deal. If you forget, the phone rings, if the kids start bothering you, if something needs your attention and you leave it for a while, it's okay. It really is. You may just need a little bit more water and a little bit more elbow grease when you start working your lines. I would say 20 minutes is about the longest you want to let it sit unattended. So before we get going, wet your sponge, wring it out, and then in a circular motion, just start working your lines. And the idea is that by going over your lines just like so, and you don't want to stay too long in one area, circular motions and keep on going, keep on moving. The idea is that you're smoothing out that line. And as you have a massive buildup, it starts to get smooth and smooth and smooth and starts to get even with the edge of the tile. If you go too far or you get a hole, it's not a big deal. Again, don't be scared of grouting. You'll see all these little pieces all over the place from when you were grouting earlier. All right? Grab a little bit of the piece, stick it back down in that little hole that you made on accident, and go over it again till it's nice and smooth. If you start seeing air bubbles, do the same thing. All it means is you didn't get enough grout down in there and you have a little air bubble. Find your little chunk somewhere, pack it in your little air bubble. And again, this is why I'm using gloves. And then just go to work in your lines again. I use the same side of the sponge until it starts to sound really, really gritty. Once it starts to sound really gritty, all you got to do is flip it over and keep on going. And just keep on working those lines. When this side starts to sound really gritty, just wring it out. You don't have to wring it out really, really, really good and get every single bit of grout out of your sponge. But try to get as much as you can. Again, when you wring it out, you don't want to get every single drop out, but you want to get most of it out. Keep working your lines. Some pieces of tile may be higher than the next piece over here. So instead of working it this way, you may want to try going the other way. And that'll depend on, as you're looking at the grout, how does it look to you? Do I need to go the other way? Do I need to go this way? And you just see what works best for that section. And again, as I've said many times, don't be scared of grouting. If you mess it up, let it dry, scrape it out of there, and start over. If you come to a section where you grouted one night and then for whatever reason you had to stop, whether it was late, you were just tired of grouting, your knees were hurting, you run out of grout, that's happened several times. Whatever the case may be, and you come back at a later date, okay, I don't know if you can see it on the video, but I've got lines here, and then I've got lines here. Hopefully you can see them, otherwise the whole point of this video is sort of pointless. Either way, if you stop halfway on your line, and then the next day you start grouting over here, and this is already hard, no big deal. All you're going to do is you're going to put your grout down, and then as you're working your lines, what you can do is you grout over some of the hard area. And then when you work your lines, you're going to take that and you're going to work it over, just like so. Just like you would any other area. And then the section, you'll see it. There's a section where it turns from already hardened grout to brand new grout, and there will be a rough transition where it's almost like a cliff, a small cliff, and it drops off. Take your sponge and go this way into that line. Now you don't want to do this on your normal wet grout. This is just where that transition is. And you're going to take it and you're going to rub it this way, and that's going to smooth it out. Okay? Just in case you have to stop one night, you'll know how to get going again. Now, as far as pressure on the sponge, I'm not putting very much pressure on the sponge. I'm putting about as much as is required to, say, close a door. Not a whole lot. And again, this will be part of your little trial and error thing. Press a little bit, and if it's not really working for you, press a little harder. And if that's not working, press a little bit harder until you find what works for you, because I can't really show you how hard to press. The only thing you have to fear from grouting is some knee pain, but even that's worth it. Because think of all the money you're saving. Another thing that you're wanting to do while you're working your lines is if you've got any big chunks on your tile, like if you just had a big mat of grout that was left here, you're wanting to work that up at the same time. Pretty much all you want to leave is the grout in the tile, and some more of my little pieces. You want to leave a gritty, wet residue all over the ground. Because what we're going to do next is we're going to let it dry while we go have a nice frothy beverage. I will say that is one nice thing about grouting is if you enjoy beer, you can have a couple of them during the waiting period. Okay, now after you've worked all of your lines and you're happy with the way that they look, the next thing that you're going to do is let it dry and go change your water. You may notice by now that your water is kind of yucky. Now, luckily for me, I have a toilet that's right next to the bathtub, and I have one of those shower heads that's on a hose. So what I do is I dump my bucket into the toilet, rinse it with the hose from the shower, and then it's good to go, and then I just flush it all down the drain. Now, as sort of a disclaimer, I do not know if grout is bad for your plumbing. I would imagine in large enough quantities, yes, it would be. However, I've tiled my dining room, my kitchen, 2 bathrooms, and now I'm in my office. That's what you're seeing right now. I've grouted and I've tiled all of that over 1.5 years, and I've rinsed everything out, small quantities anyways, rinsed it all out in the sinks and in the toilet, flushed it down the toilet, and I haven't had any plumbing problems. Now, does that mean that it's a good idea to put it all down your drains? I don't really know. But I can tell you I haven't had any issues, and it makes it really easy to clean up. If you have a large amount of grout left over, what I do is I just put it in a plastic bag and throw it away, or put it straight into the kitchen garbage can with a bag already in it. And that makes cleanup a lot easier. So that when you're rinsing it, all you're doing is rinsing the residue down the drain. As you can see now, the ground has sort of dried to a light haze. The next thing you're going to do is clean out your water like I said before, and you can use the same sponge, just clean it out really good, it's fine. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our sponge, wring it out, and run it one time over the tile. And then flip it over and run it over the same spot again. Now when you do this, it's really, really important to make sure that you get as much water out as you possibly can. You also want to rinse the sponge really good each time, because the idea is that you're going to get as much of this powdery substance up as you possibly can. Flip it over, do the same area again, and you're going to press a little bit harder than you would when you were working your lines. Now, you can just go in another circular motion and clean all this up, and it'll look pretty until it dries again, and then you'll just have to do this again. So what I like to do is go one time, flip it over, same time again, rinse it out. And then I like to split it. I like to have half the sponge on clean area and half the sponge on dirty area. This way, every spot on my floor is getting wiped 4 times with a clean sponge. So again, half and half, all the way down, flip it over, and go again. And you're just going to repeat this all the way until everything's nice and clean and pretty. I should mention, as I stated before about enjoying a nice frothy beverage while you wait for the grout to dry, it is important to always remember to drink responsibly and only drink if you are of age. The responsible part, not so much because of anything legal, but you may wake up in the morning and find that you drank irresponsible and your grout lines look funny. And then you have the wonderful joy of using that utility knife, scraping up all of your grout, only to get to redo it again. Only benefit to that, of course, is you get to drink more beer, which sort of kind of led to the problem in the first place. Okay, once you get to this point, let the floor dry again while enjoying possibly another frothy beverage. And if it dries and there's no more haze, then you're good to go. If there's still a haze, then go ahead, rinse out your water again. Do not use the dirty water from before. Rinse it out again and do that again one more time. Just take your wet sponge, wring it out really good, and go over the area one more time. Hopefully, this video has filled up any gaps or cleared up any confusion that other videos may have left you with. Again, not that any of the other videos on YouTube are bad, but like I said, a lot of grouting I had to learn from trial and error, and I really didn't understand what everyone was saying about doing this and doing that, and why I needed to do this and why I needed to do that. So again, hopefully this video clears up a lot of confusion that you may have about grouting. Not entirely sure you can see this, but there is a small black line right here, and that's part of the mortar actually showing through. Now this is grout that I laid about 4 hours ago, and this will show you how you can actually take up the grout if you don't like it. And also, if your mortar is too thick in your grout joint, it'll show you how you can get the grout out of that as well as the mortar. All I'm using is just a basic utility knife, nothing fancy. My blade here is really messed up simply because I've done this several times, just getting everything cleaned up and nice. But all you're going to do, start in a spot and then just start working it. Really pretty simple. And what I do is I turn it and go down this way a couple times, and then I go the other way and work it down that way. Obviously I'm not going to be that extreme with the knife angle. That's just to demonstrate for you. Do it a couple times each way. And that is now all powder that I can suck up with my vacuum cleaner. Guys, don't use your wife's vacuum. She gets really mad when you do that, just so you know. This is a little bit of work, but it's really not too bad. I do recommend, if you have a grout color that you're not sure about, do a small area, and then if you decide that you don't like it, then you can use your utility knife and get it out of there real easy. I'm sure they make a tool for getting your grout out. I didn't have one. I've only needed to do small areas, so I use my utility knife. Hopefully that shows you guys and answers a bunch of questions about grouting and also getting grout out if you need to. I'm going to do the exact same steps like I did before when I go to fill this in. I'm going to vacuum it out, put the grout in, work the angles or work the lines, and then clean it up. And then it'll be nice and pretty, ready to go again. So thanks for watching the video.